Beneventi omnes. This is a video for WriteLatin.org using the Lingua Latina per se illustrata curriculum, and today we are learning the last and final tense, the future perfect tense. We're going to go over a review of time and completeness, and then we'll cover the formation, expression, and practice of the future perfect, as well as the irregular verbs that use it. First off, you need to know what these symbols mean. The thumb towards you means I, you, he, she, it, we, y'all, they. The future perfect is going to be built off the future, and especially the form of the word to be in the future. I will be, you will be, and so on. So in our house of Latin, the future is out here on the far right, and the future perfect is that orange tense right next to it. Just as the perfect was relative to the present, pluperfect was relative to the imperfect, so the future perfect, you guessed it, will be relative to the future. Just to cap it all off, we had the present system, which was these three tenses, which were the green ones, and now we're completing the perfect system, which are these three tenses, which were the orange ones. And the difference between these two is that these use the present stem, while the perfect system uses the perfect stem from the third principal part without its ending. Alrighty, so the future perfect tense is translated will have blanked. Now think about that. The future is will, but this is will have blanked. And the idea of the future perfect is that if this blue arrow is time gradually passing, then the future perfect is occurring where this orange is before you get to the future, which is where the green tense here is. It is often used in conditional if-then sentences. If you will have bought a car, then we will go on vacation. The if part is the future perfect, and the then part is the future. The action of the future perfect, buying a car, always occurs before the action of the future. So you can't rebuild and switch the rooms on the house of Latin. That isn't going to work at all. So here is our future perfect. We said it will use ERI from the future, and it will put a prefix onto it, and that prefix will be the perfect stem. So ero, I will be, vocawero, I will be in a state of having called, or, more simply, I will have called. Of course, the future perfect will be a complete tense, not an incomplete one. So that means it happened in one point at time, and it is finished and no longer occurring at the time that the future finally occurs. So we had our incomplete tenses, and of those incomplete tenses, the most significant for us today is the future. Okay, so the future perfect can occur anywhere here in between the present and the future. And an example of it is if they will have repaired it, then we will use it. Now, instead of will have, you could have said will be having. And notice that if is now added as a possible adverb. It wasn't there in the pluperfect back here. Then it was just because, although, when, and after. But now we have those four and if as well. And in fact, if is the one that is almost always used in the future. Okay, so we can also reverse these two clauses, just like we were able to reverse the perfect and pluperfect. Now, too, here we're able to reverse the future and future perfect. So we will use it if they will have repaired it by then. And then in the Latin, si id refacerent, utemur. And then in reverse, utemur, si id refacerent. All right, and will have, of course, is short for will be having, and just as with the pluperfect, now to here also you can see that that can be split into an ongoing and a complete part. So us using it is contemporaneous with them being in the good old state of having thus already repaired it. So you can think of the future perfect as relative to the future that it includes in its construction. And the same thing can happen in the Latin. The eutaimering of us using it happens at the same time contemporaneously with erint, them being in a certain state of having already refaked it. All right, and this is what it looks like. Put it all together. Vocavero, vocaveris, vocaverit, vocaverimus, vocaveritis, vocaverint. Or I will have called, you will have called, he, she, it will have called, we will have called, y'all will have called, and they will have called. And so when you're saying all this, you should be conscious that the woka is the action, the w symbolizes a separation or hiatus between that woka action and the future erint state being talked about. And then that erint is, of course, its own state of future existence being predicted. So the translation is will be having blanked, or will have blanked for short. Don't ever use will be having. That's so complex. Just say will have blanked. But hopefully you won't even translate this into English. Hopefully you'll just understand it. And what do these parts mean? Well, the V, as usual, signifies a separation between the two occurrences in time. And it's also a separation in my voice, because that stop in my voice signifies imaginatively those two events in time as being separate. So, wokau, I ended the sound. Wokawerent, wokawerin. And the first part symbolizes action before, a state of being, and on a more real level, that it means you will be in a state of having called. All right, so the perfect was in this area, and then the pluperfect was in this area, and then now that we have the future coming into play, the future perfect will be in this area. So it's translated will blanked, often used in if-then conditional statements. If you will bought a car, will go on vacation. The buying occurs before the going. So how do you express this? Well, you remember the ongoing tenses all had a hump, and especially the future is very relevant to us. So the future will have that hump, as we will see, like ero, but now we'll prefix onto that wokawero, and that will create a dip or a curlicue, where we swallow our sound so that you know that there are two separate actions being referred to or prognosticated, calling before being. Or dixero, dixero, and you can hear that the more important sound to really emphasize and buzz on when you say it is the ero part, not the dix. All right, so ero, ericerit, erimiseritis, with becomes wokawero, wokaweris, wokawerit, wokawerimus, wokaweritis, wokawerint, erint. In fact, this is the only time in history that you'll have int. Well, this and the perfect subjunctive, which is identical to this. Yeah, I probably should say a word about that. The only difference between the perfect subjunctive and this one is that this starts with ero. The perfect subjunctive starts with erim. But other than that, they're all the same. After that, they both go eris, erit, erimus, eritis, erint. So you can say these multiple times, and then you can go practice these, but then we're also going to go and handle the irregulars now at the end of the lesson. Okay, so the first irregular verb is the verb to be. And remember the forms of that were fui and fueram in the perfect and pluperfect, but now it will become fuero. I will have been. Fuero felix, I if I will have been happy, wincom, I will win. So let's do our standard tense review. When on the timeline do these occur? Watch this because you're going to have to do it on your own in a second without the aid of the colors. Hopefully you know this is perfect, present, imperfect, future, right? Present again, imperfect, I was being able, I was able, I will be able, is blanking, was blanking, will blank, or will be blanking, blanked. I want, I was wanting, I wanted, I will want, I had been able, I had wanted, I will have been. There's your new future perfect. Fu ero. And I will have wanted. Wolu ero. And I will have been able. Patu ero. There we go. And as usual, remember that there is this little requirement that pot fu loses the F and it becomes just patuero. Patuero, patueris, patuerit. I will have been able. She will have been able. Alrighty, so give it a try yourself. You now know all the tenses in Latin except for the passives of these future perfects if you haven't watched that video or PowerPoint yet. But if you haven't, go to it, and now you are on top of the world. Have a blessed Latin career and hope it works for you, and enjoy it.